My name is Jess Morse, and this is my reflective presentation. The easiest way for me to show you my past, present, and future practices is to walk you through the various cameras that I've had during my photographic journey. It all begins with a Minolta 7000i. This had been my dad's camera, but he let me take it out for my final exam for my wilderness education class in high school. All I wanted to do as an adolescent was be outside. I found myself in nature. That's where my happy place was. That's where I was at peace. I have a really bad visual memory. As soon as I shut my eyes, I start losing the details of whatever it was I was looking at. So this camera became my eyes. It became my memory. My motive for taking pictures was to capture those moments that I would lose. And so as such, authenticity and truth were always my goal. I wanted to capture exactly what I saw as I saw it, because I was going to lose those details later on. It was in that same wilderness orientation class that I was first introduced to John Muir. His philosophies on nature and the wilderness really resonated with me, and it was he who first introduced me to Ansel Adams. Adams' work photographing the national parks across this country was my first inspiration. His ability to capture detail just within the grayscale prompted me to figure out how to use this thing. So in 1989, I went off to college, and that brings us to my first camera, my F3T. The Nikon F3T, titanium body, can shoot up to a 60th of a second with no battery in it. This thing could smack up against the side of the rock wall and be fine. It could bounce around inside a kayak and be fine. This was the ultimate adventure photographer's camera right here. And funny enough, it still has a roll of 3200 T-Max in there. It's probably been in there for 20 years. And it was adventure photography that introduced me to Galen Rowell. Galen Rowell was the quintessential outdoor adventure photographer. Where Ansel Adams taught me to see detail, Galen Rowell taught me to see light and color. And I was not only in awe of his work, his ability to be hanging there next to the climber with tons of camera gear on him, working twice as hard as the guy getting his picture taken, but it was also his philosophy that really inspired me and resonated with me. Galen talks about 3 types of photographs: the contrived, the controlled, and the found. The found being that picture that you just come across. You walk around a bend and there it is. The light's right, the composition's right, it's all right, you found it, you captured it, you brought it home. You didn't manipulate it, you didn't use filters, you didn't adjust anything, it was just real. So my objectives then became acquiring the skills necessary to get to those places where nobody else goes, to create an inherent uniqueness in my photographs because only 7 people had ever been there. But in college, eventually your motives turn to a career. What am I going to do to make money? How am I going to turn this into something that allows me to travel the world, be outside, and pay my bills? What better way to satisfy my wanderlust than going to work for a magazine like Outside or National Geographic? So after I graduated college, I managed to get an internship at the National Geographic Specials Office in LA. I spent 2 months working as a production assistant in the office until an opportunity to go out on location came up, a film called Sonora, The Violent Eden. This was my dream job. This was it. This was the platform that was going to launch me off into all the better things to come. But what I found myself doing was trapping animals and building sets, shooting in a garage with controlled lighting and controlled weather, and I became completely disillusioned. This wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I longed for something real. I wanted to shoot something authentic. So I joined the Navy. I served on the aircraft carrier George Washington CVN-73 out of Norfolk, Virginia. I was a photographer's mate, and I spent my days doing photojournalism. My objectives now became providing the images that my commanding officer needed from me. Most people don't realize an aircraft carrier is a floating city. When the aircrew is on board, we can have upwards of 5,000 people. And they had a weekly publication like any small town would called The Guardian. So our job as photographers was to shoot for that publication. Suddenly I was shooting people, and light and color were no longer my primary focus. Now, the actions taking place in the image became the primary focus. I had to tell a story. I spent 2 years in the Navy and then my knee blew out. I was offered either an honorable discharge or a desk job, and let's face it, I was not built to sit behind a desk. As I was leaving the Navy, my brother was getting married. So I went to his wedding, and being part of the bridal party, I got to take part in all of the photography. So I got fixated on watching this photographer and what he was doing, and I was actually pretty impressed. So since I was still having to figure out a way to make this into a career, I moved back to Arizona and I went to work for some wedding photographers. And that brings me to my F100. My F100. Still 35 millimeter film camera. What this did give me now was modes. I now had aperture priority. I now had shutter speed priority. I could let the camera do a little bit of the work. I found that I really loved shooting people. I really loved capturing those moments. And so that inevitably pointed me towards portraiture. And that's when I found Annie Leibovitz. She was and still is a huge influence on me. Her ability to capture personality in a photograph inspired me to be more creative in my imagery. My motives became capturing who a person was, not just what they looked. So then in 2005, I opened up my portrait studio. And that's when I got my D70, and shortly thereafter my D300. Now working with studio lighting, I could adjust in real time. But now again with my portraiture, my motives are shifting. Now I was being asked to create work for clients. It was no longer about my vision, but my ability to understand their vision and create it for them. Then, 2008, the economy crashed and my phone stopped ringing, and I had to reevaluate. My kids were 3 and 5, and I decided to go back and get my teaching certification and become a teacher. Eventually, I got hired at the Muckleshoot Tribal School to teach photography. Seems life had come full circle. This brings me to my current camera, my current practice, which you're looking through, my Nikon D850. Teaching photography has been far more rewarding than I ever could have guessed, which finally brings us to my proposed future project. To understand my motives, we gotta go back to my childhood for a minute. My parents collected art, and their favorite kind was Native American art. I grew up surrounded by kachina and blankets and baskets and beadwork, so getting a job at a Native school was kind of serendipitous in a way. And one of the most striking things I learned teaching at that Native school was the duality of the lives that Native Americans live in our country today. They live with one foot in the modern world and one foot in their traditional world. So when I was asked to develop a project that was close to my heart, this came to mind. How can I represent the duality of the lives that natives live in an image? Through researching the work and ethics of historical photographers like Edward Curtis and modern photographers like Makita Wilbur and her Project 562, I hope to create a sensitive and authentic portrait series of the duality that Native Americans live in America today.